delusion, man. Some of these ladies just don't get it, man. We got Breanna Stewart talking about unrivaled in year one versus in year two. And she's acting like everything is all peaches and cream. She's acting like she don't see the ratings tanking in left field. The rankings, that shit was like a pop fly. It was like a pop fly that just came down to.
There's a growing gap between how Unrivaled's leadership talks about the league and what the reality on the ground actually looks like. And Breanna Stewart's recent interview made that disconnect impossible to ignore. As a co-founder and one of the faces of the league, Stewart spoke with confidence about smooth operations, positive fan experiences, and a sense that the league is progressing exactly as planned. On the surface, her comments sounded reassuring. But when placed next to the actual performance metrics, they feel less like analysis and more like denial. Unrivaled's second season was supposed to be the moment where momentum carried forward and growth accelerated. Instead, viewership has dropped, streaming numbers have struggled, and the move into a larger arena has exposed a lack of consistent demand rather than celebrating success. These are not small warning signs. For any sports league, especially one in its early years, audience size is the foundation of survival. Yet Stewart's tone suggested that these challenges are either overstated or irrelevant. She framed year one as a success that exceeded expectations and claimed year two has simply raised the bar. That framing collapses once you consider context. The first season benefited heavily from novelty, curiosity, and a wider surge of interest in women's basketball driven by the Caitlin Clark era. Fans were exploring something new. Media attention was elevated across the entire ecosystem. Year two does not enjoy those same advantages, and the numbers reflect that reality. Even after adding a major star like Paige Buchers, marquee games struggled to reach even modest streaming audiences. That is not evidence of growth. It is evidence of fading interest. One of the most revealing moments in Stewart's interview came when she briefly mentioned television viewership and then immediately pivoted to player experience. That shift was not accidental. Viewership is the most uncomfortable topic because it is the most unforgiving. A league can create the best working environment in the world, pay competitive salaries, and operate efficiently. But without people watching, none of it is sustainable. Player satisfaction does not replace audience demand. It depends on it. The 3-on-3 format is entertaining. The talent level is undeniable. But entertainment alone does not guarantee habitual viewing. Many sports products fail not because they are bad, but because they cannot convert curiosity into loyalty. Unrivaled appears to be encountering that problem in real time, and leadership seems reluctant to acknowledge it publicly. The conversation becomes even more complicated when Stewart pivots toward activism. Unrivaled has positioned itself as a league willing to take public stances on controversial social and political issues, including immigration enforcement actions in Minnesota. Stewart frames this willingness as a defining strength rather than a liability, and there is moral weight to that position. Using a platform to speak on injustice can be principled and courageous. However, there is also a cost. When a sports league openly embraces political positions, it inevitably narrows its audience. This is not a judgment. It is an economic reality. Sports have historically thrived as a rare neutral space where people with differing views could unite. Once that neutrality is lost, some viewers disengage. Michael Jordan's famous remark that Republicans buy shoes too was not about indifference. It was about understanding how broad audiences work. Stewart seems willing to choose principles over maximum reach, which is a valid choice. What undermines her credibility is the refusal to acknowledge the consequences of that choice. If activism is contributing to declining viewership, that does not invalidate the activism. But pretending everything is going smoothly while making decisions that naturally limit growth is intellectually dishonest. There is nobility in standing for something. But leadership also requires ownership of the trade-offs. Unrivaled may be more principled than past sports ventures, but principles do not erase economic reality. If a league wants to survive long-term, it must confront the numbers honestly, not just celebrate the intentions behind them.
Talk about how important is this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, to be a co-founder and to have so much success in year one, it was kind of like we exceeded expectations in year one. Yeah. And now in year two, it set the bar for even higher. But, you know, there's this, like, confidence, there's this comfort about, you know, we've been through this before, we made everything better that we wanted to, and it's just like a really smooth running business and operation from an all-around standpoint. You know, you see the games, you see the fans enjoying obviously like viewership on TV, but the player
The disconnect here is impossible to ignore. Breanna Stewart recently sat down for an interview to discuss Unrivaled second season, and what she said unintentionally revealed just how far apart perception and reality have drifted within the league's leadership. On the surface, her comments sounded optimistic, even polished. She spoke about smooth operations, strong internal morale, and fans enjoying the product. But when you strip away the PR-friendly language and look at the actual data, a very different picture emerges. Viewership is declining. Streaming numbers are down compared to last season. The league expanded into a larger arena, yet struggles to consistently fill seats. Momentum that should be building in year 2 is instead stalling. And yet, Stewart spoke as if the league is progressing exactly as planned, as though these warning signs don't exist or simply don't matter. That's where the concern lies. Optimism is one thing, denial is another. When a co-founder and face of the league publicly frames a struggling second season as a smooth continuation of success, it raises serious questions about whether leadership is being honest with itself. This isn't about one bad interview answer. It's about a pattern of messaging that seems designed to reassure rather than confront. Sports leagues don't survive on vibes. They survive on attention, audience retention, and growth. Internal satisfaction is important, but it does not replace external demand. A league can feel great inside its own bubble while slowly losing relevance outside of it. Stewart's comments suggest that Unrivaled may be leaning too heavily on internal validation while ignoring the external metrics that actually determine sustainability. What makes this especially troubling is the context. Year 2 is supposed to be the proving ground. The novelty has worn off. Curiosity fades. What remains is the core audience and the ability to attract new viewers. Instead of acknowledging the difficulty of that transition, Stewart's tone suggested that everything is under control. That kind of messaging can delay necessary course correction. There's a fine line between confidence and delusion. Right now, Unrivaled appears to be crossing it.
We come here to play, we come here to compete, make money, and we come here to get better. So
wait, y'all see how she just brought up the viewership on TV and she tried to skate right by that? Y'all notice how she tried to skate right past the viewership on TV part? That's the delusion. Like, stop it. I'm gonna play that part again. She tried to skate by that. Like, the viewership on TV, people come.
The conversation takes another turn when Stewart pivots toward activism, and this is where things become more complicated. Unrivaled has positioned itself as one of the first professional leagues to publicly take stances on certain political and social issues, including immigration enforcement actions in Minnesota. Stewart presents this as a defining feature of the league, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But what's missing from the conversation is the cost. When a sports league takes explicit political positions, it narrows its audience. That's not an opinion, it's reality. Sports historically function as a neutral space where people with different beliefs can coexist as fans. Once that neutrality disappears, so does a portion of potential viewership. Michael Jordan's famous line, "Republicans buy shoes too," wasn't about cowardice. It was about understanding markets. You can argue that moral clarity is more important than maximum reach, but you can't pretend there's no trade-off. If Unrivaled chooses activism, it must accept that some viewers will disengage. Acting surprised when numbers decline while simultaneously embracing polarizing positions is intellectually dishonest. This is the core tension Stewart refuses to acknowledge publicly. She speaks about spreading love, standing against injustice, and using her platform to amplify unheard voices. There's genuine nobility in that. Choosing principles over profit requires courage, but courage also requires honesty. If Unrivaled's activism is contributing to declining viewership, that doesn't make the activism wrong. It makes it costly. And those costs must be owned. Pretending everything is going perfectly while making decisions that inherently limit growth undermines credibility. Stewart contrasts her approach with past athletes who prioritized business over activism. Michael Jordan's strategy may be morally debatable, but it undeniably worked. It built an empire. Stewart's approach may be more principled, but principles do not exempt a league from economic reality. You can choose values over volume, but you cannot deny the price of that choice.
You're able to check all those boxes.
Is that, look, either you get exposed or you be the exposer. Ain't nowhere to hide on that 3-on-3 court, man.
Literally nowhere.
Exactly, man. Look, bro. Last week we talked to Nafisa Collier, like as we said. Rival, one of the first leagues, professional sports leagues ever to even speak out.
Listen carefully to how Stewart frames the league's trajectory. She says year one exceeded expectations, and therefore year two has raised the bar. On paper, that sounds reasonable. It's a kind of phrase executives love to use. But when you look at what actually happened, the statement collapses under scrutiny. Year one benefited from several factors that were never guaranteed to carry over. There was novelty, a brand new 3-on-3 women's league backed by star players. There was curiosity. Fans wanted to see if the format could work. And most importantly, there was momentum in women's basketball driven by the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, which lifted interest across the entire ecosystem. Year two does not have those same tailwinds. Instead of capitalizing on that momentum, Unrivaled watched its viewership slide. Despite adding Paige Buchers, one of the most recognizable names in women's basketball, the league struggled to crack 30,000 streaming viewers for marquee games. That's not raising the bar. That's losing altitude. If year two truly set a higher standard, the numbers would reflect it. They don't. And that's why Stewart's language feels less like analysis and more like self-reassurance. Words like confidence, comfort, and smooth operation are not growth indicators. They are coping mechanisms when outcomes fail to meet expectations. The problem isn't that Unrivaled failed to explode in year two. Many leagues struggle early. The problem is pretending that decline is progress. When leadership frames stagnation as success, it becomes harder to address what's actually wrong. This isn't about pessimism. It's about honesty. If adding star power doesn't translate into viewership, something deeper is broken. Either the format isn't sticky enough, the marketing isn't resonating, or the audience simply doesn't see the league as essential viewing. None of those problems are solved by repeating that the bar is higher.
How important is it for you as an owner to have this freedom, to be able to say, you know what, I want to say this, I want to stand up for my people, and I ain't got to worry about nobody finding me or pulling me into an office.
Yeah.
You did.
No, I mean, I think Unrivaled support and really with their messaging behind this, just kind of shows what kind of league that we have here. Obviously, we're backed by the players, for the players, and all players have equity in this league. So, we're going to do what we think is best and really standing on what we believe in. And, it's hard when you get into these like political messages because not everybody likes it. But,
right.
When we go back to the spreading love instead of hate, like that's an easy thing, and we're showing that while we're in Florida, we're going to acknowledge what's happening in Minnesota and really all over the country and not let it go unheard or unseen.
There's a moment in the interview that says more than anything else, and it happens quickly. Stewart mentions television viewership, then immediately pivots to player experience. That move isn't accidental. It's a classic deflection technique. Anyone involved in sports understands that viewership is the single most important metric for long-term viability. Salaries, sponsorships, media deals, all of it flows from people watching. By shifting the conversation away from viewership and toward how players feel, Stewart avoids engaging with the hardest truth Unrivaled is facing. Player experience matters. Competitive pay matters. Operational smoothness matters. But none of those things keep a league alive if no one is tuning in. You can build the most player-friendly environment imaginable and still fail if the audience doesn't show up. The 3-on-3 format is entertaining. The talent level is high. But entertainment alone does not guarantee sustained interest. Plenty of entertaining sports products have failed because they couldn't convert novelty into habit. Unrivaled is learning that lesson in year two. The initial curiosity spike has faded, and the remaining audience is smaller than expected. Instead of addressing that head-on, leadership appears more comfortable reframing the conversation around internal satisfaction. That's dangerous, because audiences don't care how smooth your operations are if they aren't compelled to watch.